What role does digital marketing play in delivering quality customer service? And I'd like to start with Michael.
Okay, so quality customer service. So I kind of look at all of this through the lens of relationship marketing. If all what we're doing is developing relationships, other than the marketers out there that have, let's say, an orphan drug where your complete audience is like 100 people worldwide, you can just talk to them one by one. Very few of those, I think, out there. In most cases, to be scale will be relevant, you really have to think through the lens of relationship marketing. And so the way digital can help accentuate that, I always call it, it's really a force multiplier to everything else you're doing out there, is really understanding those preferences, and then as you're building that relationship, be relevant to them. It's very similar to what Chris was saying earlier. And to provide customer service, again, I don't like that term. It's really, the customer experience that I want to engage that person with. It really is about stepping back, understanding the relationship I want to have with these audiences, what preferences they might have, and then how do I begin to have that relationship with them. That to me is true customer service and customer experience that we need to aim towards getting. I'm thinking through, and by the way, this goes for either HCP or consumer. And on our, my personal experiences are, we have some patients in the diabetes space that only interact with us through our Facebook page or our Twitter page, and that's just the way they interact. Some people will only call our 800 number, no matter what you do. And some people will only talk to the doctor. And so the number of apertures to open up just expands like exponentially once you have and leverage these digital channels, but they have to be tied together, and they have to be understanding what the preferences are, not to market to sell them stuff, but to understand their body behavior, to really respond to that and build that relationship. So to me, digital marketing is a platform that can multiply all the things you've been doing in the past if you do it thoughtfully and not look at them as just a tool, just to use, just for the fun of it, that they're brought together. And I think, I've seen companies like get closer to that, but to me, in my mind, that's kind of the way I look at kind of the long tail of this, is how to actually achieve that. And there's a lot of good CPG companies out there that kind of are starting to do that you can use as a model.
I really appreciate that sentiment. Oftentimes in a forum like this, we're talking about acquisition, and I think digital's a perfect, ideal place for loyalty. Here's an idea that I just throw out there. What would it be like if your customer got an email, a genuine, not automated, not went out in force with just the mail merge, from somebody in customer care and said, Sheila, thank you for being our customer. I know you have the Quinton 9500. I'm just letting you know that I am your customer care person. Wanted to introduce myself. P.S. if you need paper, I have a sale, but, and really make it so it's like, wow, okay, I got an email that was just, he's a guy I can contact. I think that engenders real familiarity, and when it comes time for there to be an upsell or something, please, up front.
Imagine the impact of that. Imagine the impact of that if you could use some of the things that Kelly's talking about in terms of big data analytics and having marketing place those messages in the hands of your sales force as the next prescriptive step that the sales force could take. Hugely beneficial. And it moves the needle in a huge way from a revenue perspective.
I think one of the big opportunities is really in providing a shortcut to the answers that people are looking for. There's a great opportunity for many things in digital. We've talked about helping the reps get better information. We've talked about searching on websites. I think social media is another one of those examples. Robin from Kimberly-Clark was on the panel last year and talked about their Feeding Tube business, and they've got a Facebook fan page for My Mikey. And if you look at it, it's fantastic. There's almost 2,000 users on there now, and there's a series of different questions people come up with, where I've got this issue, how do I deal with it? Someone else chimes in with a practical answer, And so it's a phenomenal tool where they are obviously investing in that channel, but what's coming out of it is much more than what they're putting into it because of all the user input. And so that's I think a great example of a very positive way to use social media.
But I think it's not only just that, because people are coming to you and you're having that interaction, but it's also, I think we as an industry can become much better at reaching out. Using technology and, the whole monitoring and listening to our advantage, it sounds wrong saying to our advantage, but I really feel we sit with so much information that we can provide to people, help them educate, help them overcome, to the point that was mentioned before about, the preoperative information. Give them that information they're looking for if they can't find it, because there's so much stuff out in the space.
Yeah, one trick I just now thought about this is one trick I've kind of used with my team is just have them, and this may be more kind of in the VP planning for the next year, thinking kind of broadly is, think about a world where, I think to your point, the sales force being the biggest line item in the budget, you didn't have a sales force, or you didn't have the customer service rep. What would you do? So you still have this job to do. How would you do it? And that tends to open up their mind quite a bit. So if they don't have the privilege to come to a conference like this and really understand kind of what digital tools are available, you still get to the crux of the matter, which is, how do I want to engage? What do I want to do? And that kind of starts the conversation going. Because really what we're trying to do, and the tools and the technology exists for the most part, is just how to better surround the job that we're having to do and not rely on, we have this giant customer service department with a bunch of customer service reps or a bunch of sales reps out there, but think, beyond that.
Thank you. When we met last night to talk over some of the questions, one of the ones that we came up with was about the role of a physician. And if you'll indulge me for a moment, every Tuesday I have the privilege of sending out an email to this great big group. And I had nothing to say last night. I just did not know what to write. I wrote something very, very lame and went to sleep. And then I realized this physician conversation that we had, this would be a great chance for me to integrate the two. So if you'll indulge my reading, I wrote as the subject line, "Why are you still trying to influence physician preferences?" And I wrote, Bosnia and Herzegovina-based member Zelko Ronkovic asked this week, does the med device industry need physicians, or are we just customers? It's a topic we'll discuss today at the Digital Marketing for Medical Devices Conference in Minneapolis. Zelko, we unequivocally need the voice of physicians here in the medical devices group. As a medical device marketer, I'm often asked, how do manufacturers win awareness and interest from physicians? I'd like to ask a slightly different question of this predominantly manufacturer-based group, though. How important is it, really, to educate physicians about the benefits of your product? I understand the physician's role in market research, design, and development. I see the relevance when selling into primary care, of course, where the physician owner makes the purchasing decision, and where specialist referrals are involved. That came from you, Scott Nelson. But with more hospital-owned practices, where physicians are employees, and in acute care, where buying groups, including GPOs, are calling the shots, physician preference seems to carry less weight. So, unless you have a medical breakthrough and dramatically improved patient outcomes, why are you still spending resources on physicians in the acute arena? And we already got 5 responses on that, which I will withhold, and instead ask the panel if anything I've asked has resonated with you, if you'd like to jump in with your thoughts.
Yeah, it's really resonated with me. Especially in the area of the products that we manufacture, that I'm responsible for, which are abdominal thoracic grafts, endografts. That physician has to know how to put that graft in there correctly, and we as manufacturers have to show them. And that physician preference is everything. Our whole company has been built on physician preference. Even in the very earliest days, Mr. Cook used to go to a convention and he had a Bunsen burner set up on his table, and he would make catheters to match the doctor's specifications, and they'd say bend it a little to the left, bend it to a little to the right. You know, I can't imagine. We have hundreds of products that are named after physicians who created those products with Cook. They are an integral part of our business model. Yes, HBS or the business solutions purchasing organizations, yes, they are important, but at the end of the day, they're not the ones that are putting that device in the patient. The physician is the one that's putting it in the patient. And if it's not meeting the physician the way the physician's been trained properly, if it's not meeting the way they want to do that procedure, then we haven't done our job properly.
So I heard you say physician education is paramountly important.
Yes.
I didn't hear you say the physician is going to impact whether or not a Cook device gets implanted or not.
Well, it depends. First of all, it depends on the device. But I will tell you that I do know for a fact that when you go up before an organization, a purchasing organization within the hospital, and they make decisions, there is a group of physicians that are having an impact on that decision. And, you know, they're going to make recommendations to the ones that they think are the right ones to use. And especially if it has to do with devices that are that would be considered class 3 devices. There's ones that are very technical, like, for example, a stent is used for a patient who has compression of the ureters, and those ureters are closing down, and that device that we make is the one it's the only one in the market that's going to be able to solve that problem. That physician's getting the preference right there.
Something to add?
I would like to add that, you know, I think it depends on the physician as well, right? So if I'm just out of a teaching hospital, right, and I have much less influence, if you will, right, so I'll probably toe my company line and use the, you know, whatever the buying committee is recommending. But if you do a segmentation and targeting correctly and trying to lean on topics which were brought up earlier, and maybe find out through digital channels who are the key influencers, who are the right physicians who actually have the ability to influence buying committees or even override buying committees, because that happens. You know, you can actually say, you know, I think as a physician that this particular device is better than other devices, and here's my reasons why. And in this hospital and my attending privileges, I would use this device. So, I mean, if you can actually make some of these doctors your brand ambassadors, if you will, obviously based on clinical outcomes, then that's a very, very powerful tool, and I don't think we should try and give up on that tool as of today.
I think it's really hard to think about this as one decision. When you think about healthcare being millions of decisions, you know, and there's 3 main players in those decisions. You have the patient, you have the provider, and you have the payer. And each medical decision can be mapped somewhere in that triangle as who's the predominant player. If it's Latisse, the patient's going to ask the doctor's going to probably prescribe it, and the payer's going to say, knock yourself out, right? If it's a complex, life-saving procedure, the physician is going to drive the boat, the payer's probably going to try to stay out of the way, and the patient's going to find a way to pay the copay, all right? If it's a first-stage antihypertensive therapy, the payer's going to say, doc, you have these 3 choices, and the doctor's not going to complain too much. But every healthcare decision can be plotted somewhere in that triangle, okay? And each of those 3 players have a relative role. And with the data that's out there available now, you can start to make intuitive guesses as to what each player's role is in that particular decision.
There's no doubt that the economic
Raise
customer...
your hand if you have a comment you'd like to add. Please go ahead.
There's no doubt that the economic customer is becoming more important. I don't know that that necessarily means that the clinical customer is becoming less important. You can imagine if you're sitting around the table and they're deciding which technology to bring in and which price, and the doctor says, yeah, they're all kind of the same, that's going to be a pretty short conversation, right? So you clearly still need to build that physician preference and make sure that the person who's best equipped to evaluate the value of that product thinks that it's highly valuable. But at the same time, you know, as we look at, you know, the rise in this economic customer, we need to have good solutions to address their concerns. You know, how is this product going to fit within my economic constraints? How is this going to provide economic value? Why is this a good return on the investment we're putting into this? And so I think that's something that we need to look at multiple different ways we can approach that customer, understand them, and provide them a relevant answer. And I do think there's a role for digital technology in that solution. You can, for example, do something like create an online forum where you can discuss some of these events, right, and provide value to those customers and start to understand who they are and understand their needs. You know, I think there's many ways you can approach it, but clearly we need to understand this customer better.
Well, we've got about 2 minutes left. I want to thank our panel. I thought that was great, really. I will close by a little pitch, if you don't mind. And that is that friends don't let friends write bad emails. You are my friends. Don't let me write crap for an email that goes out to 110,000 people because I just ain't smart enough to come up with 52 good ideas a year. I need you. So please seriously consider how you can contribute to the group. Just for laughs, I put a profile link to the doctor who raised the original question. And so far, his profile had 438 clicks today. So it's a great way to get some extra exposure, have something ready on your profile, a link to your website. It's a great way to use social media to share and amplify your message. We thank you very much. We are breaking now for lunch. When you return, this side is for social stuff, and that side is for mobile stuff. Thank you very much. We'll see you for lunch.